Okay, so this is a map variant of this boss. This should be interesting. It's pretty strong. Let's see what this boss is like in maps. Okay, so let's knock him. Shout. Go. One shot. Okay, armor break. Knock. This build actually is like kind of kicking ass, I'm not gonna lie. Finish him real quick. It's like the build's actually like working. Wait for it. Stun. Shout. Smack. And oh. Okay, phase 2.
Let's see you survive this.
Okay, shout. And go. Okay, hard game. All right, so I've been having a lot of fun with this build. This is like a one-shot warrior titan bossing type of build. Kind of slow running through maps because you're a warrior and you got a big unga bunga hit, but when you're on bosses, it's super satisfying. I've been streaming pretty much nonstop since the launch of the game. I already got 42 hours on this character, and constantly when I'm doing bosses, as soon as I kill a boss like that, everyone's like, what's the build, what's the build, what's the build? So I'm making the video to answer what the build is, and hopefully people that are just interested and think it looks fun can enjoy it as well. There's plenty of room to grow on the build. It is my first build on my first character in a brand new game, so I'm sure there is some mistakes in here, but I hope you enjoy it. I'll walk you through the mechanics on how it works, the weak spots of the build, the strong spots of the build, my thoughts on Warrior in general, basically everything you need to know to get it working like what you saw in the video clips here. First, we got to do a word from the sponsor, and then we'll get going. Ad time. Core Punk has a unique visual style. They call it like diesel punk or mana punk, but basically they're combining steampunk and cyberpunk in a fantasy world setting. Now, they explain themselves as a game that's reminiscent of classic MMOs. They actually throw out, like, RuneScape as such an example. Now, being an obvious RuneScape fan, I can see where they're going with this statement. It's a longer form of progression, and there is a variety of leveling and crafting systems that you can dive into. As you play throughout the game, you can unlock better gear, you can unlock mounts, you can engage in PvP, go throughout the world and discover the different quests to do, and generally progress your character. And the style of combat is like a MOBA style combat, so you have 4 primary abilities that you unlock as you level, but there's also skill trees, there's different weapons you can use, there's gear that you can equip, everything you would expect from both a MOBA style game as well as a MMORPG. It is an open world, and there's a very heavy emphasis on exploration. And while you're exploring the world, you're finding more quests to do, more people to interact with. And you can do this either solo or in a group, so you can get a couple of your friends and fight some monsters along the way. The game is currently in early access, and you can get access with the link in the description of this video. So if you're looking for something to do or any of this sounds interesting to you, you can check it out there. Thank you to Core Punk for sponsoring today's video. I'm in a tier 4 map here after beating both the campaign and the cruel campaign in order to walk you through and explain the build. The first thing you're going to need to know, I'm going to explain everything as if you're basically brand new to the game. The first thing you need to know is what heavy stun is. Now, underneath the health bar of minions, you're going to notice there is a bar that can fill up, and when it's full, they're heavy stunned. They like stagger back, they'll have an animation. Bosses have this as well. Now, this is crucial to understand because heavy stun is a very big part of the mechanic of how this build works. Now, I'm a warrior, and when I did my ascendancy, I became a titan. And one of the things with a titan is you have surprising strength here that does 40% more damage against heavy stunned enemies. And if you don't know more damage basically means it's a multiplier, and increased damage means it is additive damage. So more is better than increased in like almost all circumstances when we're talking about ramping damage with multiple different multipliers and abilities. Also important to note that down here in the bottom left, I'm using Skull Crusher, which does 20% more damage against heavy stun enemies with maces. So we have multiple more multipliers just based upon the heavy stun. Now, you might have noticed when I attack somebody and they stagger back, they have this icon underneath them there that appears with them as well. That is because that is what they look like when they're fully armor broke. You can break people's armor, and you see that number at 17,000. He's partly armor broke. If I hit him again, now he's fully armor broke. I filled out and broke all of his armor. This is important to know because being fully armor broke is how this move, Sunder, guarantees a critical hit. If you look at Sunder, which is our primary damage for this build, consumes fully broken armor on enemies to guarantee a critical hit. So how am I both heavy stunning them and fully breaking their armor at the same time? Well, that is through the use of support gems on my basic ability. So this is Mace Strike. It's just my normal basic swing. And on it, I have a gem called Devastate. Supported skills fully break armor when inflicting a heavy stun. So what I'm doing is I have Overpower, which causes more stun buildup. I have Ruthless, which again is more stun buildup. And then I have some bonus damage from close combat. You don't even need this gem. It works with the 3, or you could put something else in there as well. And you unlock more sockets. You'll start with 2, but you'll earn more sockets through these things called Jeweler Orbs, which you'll get throughout as you're completing the campaign and killing mobs later on in the game. So if you don't have these many sockets, don't worry. You can just use Devastate plus like Overpower, for instance, and then you can add more stun buildup as you go. So effectively, we are stunning them, which is doing a heavy stun, and when they're heavy stunned, they are fully armor broken. And then we are using Sunder, which is guaranteeing a crit. So here we go. We walk up to a mob, we hit them. They are now armor broken and stunned. We use the ability, and we got both the more damage from the heavy stun as well as the guaranteed crit from them being fully armor broken, as well as we're doing more damage to them because their armor's broken. Now, you might have noticed that the area of effect of my Sunder is actually quite large. That is because I am using both increased area of effect on the passive tree, which we'll go over in a moment, but mostly because of Upheaval. Creates 2 additional fissures, so basically it's doing 3 of these like that. They each do less damage, but now we're doing 3 of them. You also attack slower. So if I removed this, for instance, it would look like this, which is much more normal. Also, you're going to notice that it's red. That is because I am using Fists of War, and what that does is boost it to do 20% more damage and area of effect only once every 6 seconds. Well, we're not just spamming this move. We have low attack speed. We're just one big hit, basically. So most of these attacks that we're going to be using are, in fact, boosted. That's why it's glowing red. You can see here, this red is going to fill up, and then the next one is boosted. So it's bigger area of effect, 20% more damage. If we did it without it, it would be slightly smaller and wouldn't glow red. So other than the Fist of War, which is that boost, and other than Upheaval, we're basically just getting more damage. Heavy Swing, 35% more damage, and again, that's a multiplier. And then we have Brutality, which is more damage. And because we're using Brutality, we don't do any Chaos or Elemental damage, so when we're talking about our weapon, I'm really only trying to stack as much physical damage as possible. I have Iron Runes in there for increased physical damage, and you can use the Artificial Orbs in order to gain up to 2 sockets on your weapon, and then put Iron Runes in there. You can't remove these, so make sure you don't mess up and only put Iron Runes in to get even more physical damage, and you can Whetstone to quality to get even more physical damage, and that will be one of the highest ways in order to increase the damage of your weapon. Now, you might have noticed that when I was attacking on the boss, the Sunder actually didn't just go off once. It went off twice, and sometimes actually 3 times. And that is because if someone is heavily stunned and knocked back, and I use Seismic Cry, what this does is it empowers my next attack to have an aftershock effect that makes it where it happens more than once. So now I have an empowered Seismic Cry for my next slam, and when I do my slam, it's going to go once, it's going to go twice. Now, how Seismic Cry works is, I'll read it to you real quick and explain it. Basically, this is a war cry that if a heavy enemy or a heavy stun enemy is hit, your next slam is empowered to perform an additional aftershock, okay? Now, I also put premeditation on this, that my empowered attacks do 15% more damage, so not only is my next slam going to basically attack twice, but I'm also getting 15% more damage once again, so I'm ramping damage even harder. So the combo actually ends up looking like this. You knock them back, you do the shout, and then you attack, and then there's the full combo, and it attacks twice. So that's why when we look at footage like this, you're seeing me basic attack because I'm building up the stun on that stun bar underneath them. Then I'm doing a shout so I can get the double attack, and then I'm slamming and I'm getting the multi-attack there. You're going to notice that one actually attacked 3 times. So on the passive tree next to Skull Crusher that does 20% more against Heavy Stun, I also took Split the Earth, which gives me a 10% chance to Aftershock to slam twice, and then 8% chance for an Aftershock on the slams as well. So basically I have an 18% chance for my slams, of which, Sunder is a slam, 18% chance for it to do another one. And we already have one guarantee Aftershock with the Cry, so I'm going to get 2 for sure, 18% chance to get a third one. The rest of my tree is, I have a little bit of attack speed up here. This is not mandatory. I was just testing with this. A little bit of attack speed and accuracy down here because I need accuracy. This isn't necessary either. But the main ones and the pretty easy ones to get are just increased melee damage and stun buildup, increased melee damage and melee damage against heavy stun enemies. Basically anything that bonuses damage to heavy stun enemies has stun buildup as well. Increased melee damage, increased two-handed damage. And then an important one here, just for map clearing to make it a little bit nicer later, is vocal empowerment. Makes it where your war cries empower an additional attack. This is kind of nice because when I do the shout, my Sunder will do 2, and then the next Sunder, if I do one right after it, it's going to do 2 as well. So when I'm going through packs of, elite mobs, it actually helps me clear a little bit easier. It's just a little bit more quality of life. I don't constantly have to reshout. Also, leading up to it is 16% increased damage to empowered attacks, of which the Sunder will be when we do the one shot as well. But basically, all of the nodes are melee damage against Immobilize or Heavy Stun, and Immobilize does count as Heavy Stunned as well. So all of these nodes here work for more bonus damage. It's pretty simple to see. I just took Stun Buildup, Attack Damage, Heavy Stun Damage, and then Skull Crusher. The rest of my gear is really just about survival. It's just things like resistances and max life. It doesn't really contribute too much to the damage of this build. It's specifically just to keep me alive. So none of this is as relevant. Your gear will get better for the defenses of the build just as you progress throughout the game. The most important thing for the damage and get the one shot that this build is built around is get a two-handed mace and with as much physical damage as you possibly can on it. And the Oak Great Hammer works good because it gives you 40% increased stun buildup as an implicit as well, but you don't have to use it. The Oak Great Hammer actually has a really slow attacks per second, so just prioritize whatever has high physical damage and high attack speed. The reason stun buildup is important on this build is stun buildup is how quickly you're filling that stagger bar, which is important for all mobs, because if I can one-tap single mobs, then it's just much quicker for me clearing through. I can one-tap, do the Cry, and then Sunder, or if I'm attacking like yellow mobs, if I can one-tap them and instantly stun them as well, it just makes going through the maps way easier. Now, I said I would say some cons of this build. Here is a map. This is a tier 4 map that I'm currently working on. And as I go through the map, you're going to notice the attack speed of the move is very slow. So there's vulnerable moments in which I'm like about to attack a big pack of mobs and they can kind of attack me. So they can interrupt me. Because of this, having stun threshold, basically stopping from getting stunned, that's what the stun threshold does, is kind of nice to keep you from getting interrupted while you're doing the attack. But the other part is you can literally, in the middle of you trying to do the attack, you can just get ran down. They can just run up and straight up hit you. So especially when you're trying to do the stun and then the war cry, etc., in order to do the full combo, that part can be kind of annoying and can make it where it can be fairly frustrating doing maps. I would say that's the biggest negative I've had with the build. But to be honest, it's fairly satisfying when you're against a big pack of mobs or blue mobs or yellow mobs or something. You're just kind of deleting the whole pack. It's visually pretty nice and the sound's pretty good too. And when you have a big pack of mobs that are kind of spread down a tunnel like this, you can just hit and it just will clear literally everything. You get to a yellow mob here, you knock them, you shout, and then you use the move for the yellow mobs. And it's really satisfying for that because you can basically one-shot anything in the map, but it's definitely a little bit annoying when you have like one tiny little mob and you do this like giant wind up in order to hit him. I think the weakest point of the build is it needs some change. I tried Ancestral Totem in order to like help clear the little mobs while I'm moving, and I've got the Hammer of the Gods that I use as well, this big thing here, in order to be able to cast something, keep moving, so the mobs behind me are kind of killed. But I noticed what my gameplay style is, I end up just getting a bunch of mobs surrounded around me, and then I just do the big Sunder and kind of blow them all up at once. So if you're looking for something that's just like a big slam, big AoE, destroy something all at once, that's basically what this build is built out for. Definitely is not going to be your fastest mapper like a Sorceress where you just like nonstop running through, or a Deadeye or something. So it's going to be a slower build for sure, but it's really satisfying to like set up the combo and then just one tap a boss. And if that's what you're looking to do, well, that's how, I've got this build running so far. Lots of room to grow. I'm sure there's something that you could change about it as well. But really, I'm actually been like having a pretty good time with this. And I haven't had too much difficulty, except that when you're doing the big windup, you can eat a whole bunch of attacks and get surrounded and get killed during it. You could probably, in the passive tree, not have so much reduced attack speed, for instance, and that would probably help you out with some of this. See, 5% reduced attack speed, 5% reduced attack speed. I got reduced attack speed here as well. So, I mean, that's a whole bunch of reduced. If you don't pick up those, the windup won't be as long. And if you're not using the oak hammer that has such a slow base attacks per second, or if you have attack speed on the hammer itself, all of these things will help that wind up. So this kind of rose into just my thoughts about the warrior in general. I think a lot of the feedback that we're seeing, like there's a lot of people that just do not like playing warrior. It's because of these giant wind-up times. Obviously, it can be faster for the reasons I mentioned, but there's also just a whole bunch of moves that in Gemro have a very long cast time or long animation. And so I've seen a lot of people start warrior, get to like Act 2 or something, be like, man, this just feels slow and it's not for me, and they quit it. And for me, I went the other way. I just thought, okay, it's slow. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a boss killer. I'm just going to make it where one big unga bunga, go face, hit them, and they die, as opposed to trying to fight it and make it something that's not. If I wanted to just like go through and kill all the little mobs immediately, quickly, and be, you know, warping all around, going fast, I'm just going to play Sorcerer. Like, that's just going to do a better job than this thing ever could. Instead, I double down on, this is my boss killer. I want the satisfaction of one hitting. And obviously, there's been a lot of people, you know, in my chat, I've been streaming every single day. I've been streaming more than I've been doing anything else right now. I got 42, 43 hours streamed on this character already. And every time I kill a boss, everyone in the chat's like, what the fuck did I just watch? Like, you can one-shot with this, and my warrior doesn't do that, and I have to re-explain the build every single time. So I wanted to explain this for you today. I do think that the warrior itself could use some buffs to some of the other moves, because to be quite honest with you, a lot of these moves don't feel amazing to use in terms of like quality of life, as well as I really had to go out of my way to find a million. Like, it takes a lot of setup. Like, I have to do the hit them, to stun them, to armor break them, to consuming the armor break. Like, you have to do all of these things to make it have the one big thing. But that pinnacle moment of like, you set it up and then just boom is really satisfying, which has kept me on the class. I actually had more fun today at level 73 than I've had yet with the character. Like, my fun is ramping, but you really have to push through with the warrior. And because the animations are so long, and like what ends up happening is you do like these big casting animations, and then you're just straight up like dying during the animations. You're getting swarmed. So a lot of people are getting frustrated, like, I'm getting hit and interrupted and all this stuff. So you kind of have to wait until you get like some decent armor. Like, I started to gain some resistance. I started getting some armor. I started getting some life. And, you know, you can take a look at this armor if you want real quick. None of these contribute to like the damage of the build, but, you know, it took me quite a bit of time to like farm out and get some gear that actually had like HP or resistances, etc. So if you're willing to commit like a fairly substantial amount of time to the warrior, it can feel fairly satisfying. But I think like almost immediately the warrior can feel kind of bad, like pretty much off the rip, which is some feedback I've seen from a lot of people, and many people rewrote to like ranger or sorceress and like pretty much immediately fell in love with those classes. Actually, at level 50, I rode the sorceress because my buddy started playing the game, and I rode to play with him, and I immediately felt the same thing. I was like, oh my god, like sorceress is just, it feels like a joke. I can just walk through and like sparking, and like they're just going out automatically and just killing everything. Meanwhile, my, you know, warrior's got to go big unga bunga. But, you know, now it's starting to pay off a little bit, and I'm starting to one-tap bosses as long as I can find the bosses. And so on the map, there's a lot of times I've straight up died on the map and, like, lost attempts on the map, because what happens is, like, I'm going good, I'm destroying and killing everything, but then I'll do a big, like, go to do a big one-tap, and then suddenly something appears below me, I get, you know, killed immediately out of it. So you need a lot of stun threshold, a lot of HP, a lot of tank to be able to sustain all of this. I even went with this aura time of need that's just like passively recovering health and removing elements and stuff. And I'm just finding myself having to need more tank and invest more into that, which it doesn't feel as satisfying to like invest into things just so I can get my attack off. And I think a lot of this can be solved with attack speed too. But that's just kind of some general thoughts I have on the warrior. Takes a lot of investment. Is very satisfying with the big payoff. I have yet to find a boss that I can't like almost immediately kill. There is one warning I would tell you. If you don't do the combo correctly, like if you're just trying to do the slam on the boss, you're going to notice your damage like sucks. You want to make sure you actually are stunning them first, then war crying, then slamming. That way you get the double war cry. That way you get the stun bonus, because again, a large portion of your damage comes from the fact they're heavy stun, and the guaranteed crit comes from the fully broken armor. So you need both them to be heavy stun as well as fully broken armor. And in most times, you can get that set up in like 10 seconds or under on bosses, as long as you have enough stun build up. You just hit them. Suddenly they're knocked, and then you just big unga bunga, and they die. So give it a shot, see what you think. I've really enjoyed this build at this point in the game. And Sunder is not like, it doesn't take too long for you to be able to get Sunder and overpower in some of these gyms and Devastator, like a support level 2, etc. So you can get the build online like fairly early, like 40 or 50 or something. You should be able to actually get the build online before you finish the campaign. You'll actually be able to start like one-tapping bosses like in the Cruel campaign. And that's a really fun feeling when the build goes from like, okay, well, like I'm just killing elites, and then suddenly like these bosses that you're like struggling with, you just like one-tap them and they just fucking die. You're like, oh, I exploded them. Like that was a lot of fun to discover when they started coming online. So that's about it. Hope you all enjoy Warrior. Join me live if you want to see me live map progressing. I will be online at 10 a.m. Pacific. That is 1 p.m. Eastern. So 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. As of the posting of this video, that would be basically like 5 hours after the posting of this video. So I'll see you online at the Twitch. Hope you enjoyed this video and have a wonderful day.